Hey everybody, welcome back for this week's episode of Getting Psyched for Information Literacy. What we're going to be covering this week is talking about how to cite indirect or secondary sources correctly and why that matters. So first, let's cover what a secondary or indirect source is. An example of this is you find an article and you really like what the author is saying, but they're actually citing another author. So instead of in your paper using the citation from the article that you found, you're actually going to need to find the original source or the primary source. So why it's important that you actually need to find the primary source is because sometimes things can be misrepresented in a paper, or they might have chose a certain part of an article that isn't actually lining up with what they're saying, and it can ultimately be like a bad game of telephone. If you ever played that, where one person starts saying something and then whispers it to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, well, sometimes those things end up getting changed along the way. And that is something that can happen in scholarship and research. So that's why it's important to go back to that original resource. However, what if you can't? What if you cannot find that original source anywhere? Well, my first suggestion would be to ask a professor and or a librarian to see if they can help you find it, because maybe they will think of a different place to look, or they'll just have a better chance of finding it. But say it legitimately cannot be located, so the next thing you'll need to do is use a special in-text citation to inform your reader where that information actually came from. So I have an example here on the screen of what it would look like. So you would cite the original with the author's name and the date, but then you put as cited in the article that you're actually reading and the exact page. Or you can do it a little bit different, where you put the original author, primary author's name, and then in your in-text citation say where it's actually cited, where you actually found the words that you want to use. Then in your reference list, it's only going to have the particular article that you looked at, not that original one, because we weren't able to find it. So we have to keep this in mind when we legitimately cannot find the original source, but still then you run the risk of the article not saying what the original article was actually implying. So that's why it's always best to go back to that original primary direct source. So I actually have a firsthand example of something like this, where the information changed with each time it was cited, and it became evident that the researcher never went back to the original source to really check out what was said. So my example is of the Christopher Center. I was reading something when I was in library school which stated that the Christopher Center Library had moved all their books to storage. Well, I knew that that wasn't true. So I wanted to get to the bottom of how this information changed from each citation. So I'm going to share with you now the process that I took to find out the origin of the information. So this was the first article that I came across. It was written in 2012, and as I was reading it, I'm going to scroll down, I came across this, where it says, an extreme example is Valparaiso University, where all the books have been moved to storage and are only available by request. The library space serves entirely as a student workspace. Again, you guys have been to the Christopher Center, and you know that there are indeed books out in public spaces of the library. So my next step was to look at the reference page for this particular author. So I found the citation, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy the title, because Google Scholar is really great about finding out if, from partial citations, if our library has it or not. All right, our library does not. So I knew I needed to go into interlibrary loan, which should sound familiar. And then I actually got the article requested in less than a day, and here I'm just going to do Control F for Valparaiso. Here is their statement. They are citing their author. According to Conkey, in 2006, the recently designed library at Valparaiso University includes a Steinway piano, cafe, collaborative learning, study spaces, but no books. The once important book collection is relegated to storage. So again, saying that there are no books in our stacks, but only in storage. So this is their site. I'm going to want to do the same thing where I go down to the reference list and find Conkey. Here I have this source. It was written in 2006, and the title, I'm going to do the same thing. Go back in to Google Scholar, paste that in, found it, and I have it here. I had it already brought up, and I start reading this. I find out Valparaiso students are flocking to the new library. This is talking about the Christopher Center when it was built, and it says about 1/5 of them are kept in a vault. Students can't enter. Robotic arms retrieve them in 15 seconds after a request is made online. So this original source is telling us that only 1/5 of the books actually went into the ASRS, but we still have books in our collection. So going back the other way, we can see that Salter said that, or we can see that Salter cited them, but incorrectly gave the information saying that all the books are in the ASRS. And then in this one, they just cited Salter instead of going back and looking at the original article. So the information got skewed as it moved through different citations. So it really is important that when you are citing something, that you go to the original source, see if it still fits with what you want to cite, and it hasn't been misrepresented, and then cite that original article. I hope this helps clear things up. And again, if you ever get stuck and can't find that original resource, always feel free to reach out to a librarian or professor, and we'd be glad to help you find it.